What's up, Valley Creek students? Welcome to Student Circles. We're in the middle of our series called A Different Way. Do what Jesus did. And really, what we've been talking about is what it looks like to live a different way. To do things differently than everyone else. To live differently than the world around us. To do the things that Jesus did. And so, while the normal thing would be to do what you want, when you want, we've been talking about things like prayer and fasting and Sabbath. Things that, if we're honest, are not normally a part of our everyday life. But what we're doing is we're training ourselves to be godly. We're practicing doing the things that Jesus did so we can do the things that Jesus did. We're training behind the scenes so we can live like Jesus on the spot. So what does that look like in our lives? Well, check this out.
And so we have to look at Jesus' life and ask ourselves the question, does he know what he's talking about? Does he know how to live life? And when we look at the rest and the peace and the joy and the contentment of his life, we then have to look at how did he get those things? That's what Jesus did, but what did he do behind the scenes in order to become that kind of person? And the practice we're going to talk about today is silence and solitude. See, Jesus practiced silence and solitude, and that's why he was able to not be in a rush and be a man with peace and quiet in his soul. And when I say silence and solitude, what you could think about is the evangelical church has picked that practice up over the years and just called it quiet time. If you've ever heard the term quiet time is a play off the practice of silence and solitude, but it is so much more than the quiet time that you think of. And we see it all throughout Jesus' life. I mean, right in the beginning of Jesus' ministry, at once the Spirit sent him out into the desert, and he was in the desert for 40 days. Silence and solitude, a quiet place, a lonely place, the desert. He withdrew from people in order to be with God and quieted everything down. He gets back, he does a little bit of ministry, and then very quickly, very early in the morning, while it was still dark, Jesus got up, left the house, and went off to a solitary place where he prayed. He didn't do much ministry, and he quickly went back to silence and solitude. Then we see, but Jesus often withdrew to lonely places and prayed. It wasn't a thing he did here or there. It was literally how his life was arranged, how his life was ordered. Then one day, because so many people were coming and going that they did not have a chance to eat, he said to his disciples, come with me by yourselves to a quiet place and get some rest. He's trying to teach them how to live silence and solitude. So they went away by themselves in a boat to a solitary place. They withdrew to be alone, to be with God, to have some silence, but the crowd found them. And the crowd came, and Jesus fed the 5,000 with the bread and the loaves, and then he dismisses the crowd, and it says after leaving them, he went up on a mountainside to pray. He's like, I didn't get my silence and solitude. I'm glad you all ate, but I still need my silence and solitude. And then even at the end of his life, Jesus went out as usual to the Mount of Olives, and his disciples followed him. On reaching the place, he withdrew about a stone's throw beyond them, knelt down, and prayed. It was his normal practice to withdraw from the crowd, from humanity, from the silence, from the noise, and get alone with God. Jesus practiced silence and solitude as a way of life. And if we want to do the things that Jesus did, like have joy and peace and contentment, then we have to do the things that Jesus did, like practice silence and solitude. Now, I know when I say silence and solitude, many of you are like, I don't know about that, but I'll take some peace and quiet and some R&R. Yes. The only problem is a peaceful and restful soul doesn't come without silence and solitude. Extroverts, you are terrified of silence and solitude because you love crowds and conversations. You love crowds, people, energy, adventure, activation, all kinds of stuff and conversations. You will talk to anyone about anything at any given time. And all our introvert friends, what we think is we've got silence and solitude down. But the truth is, most introverts I know don't practice silence and solitude. They practice isolation and indifference. Introverts are like, bro, this is our one. Don't ruin this for us. I know. But we don't practice silence and solitude as introverts. We choose isolation, which is withdrawing from the world to be by myself, and indifference. I would rather not know, I would rather not hear, because if I hear, then I'm responsible to do something about it. And quietness and trust is your strength. You say, so what then is silence and solitude? Well, silence is quieting down the noise, both the external noise and the internal noise. Silence is choosing to shut everything down, to quiet it all down, to in a sense, position and prepare myself to be able to be an active listener to that which God wants to say. I'm turning down the external noise, all of the media and the technology and the sights and sounds and all the things, but I'm also turning down the internal noise. And then solitude is withdrawing, not to be by myself, that's isolation. Solitude is withdrawing from the world in order to be with God. I remove myself from everyone and everything in order to be with God. And when I come into silence and solitude, I come with no agenda. I come and I am present, and I present myself to God to allow him to do a deep work within me. That's silence and solitude. It's I am present, and I have presented myself to God and asking him to do a deep work within me. And the interesting thing about silence and solitude is it requires faith. Because when I enter into silence, what I'm saying is that God is about to speak to me. And when I enter into solitude, what I'm saying is God is here. So silence and solitude in its own way is a declaration that God is speaking and that God is here. It's a declaration of faith that I am present and I have presented myself to God in order for him to do a deep work within me. And so I love this verse that we started service with today. Of one thing I am certain, my soul has become calm, quiet, and contented in you. Like a weaned child resting upon his mother, I am quiet. My soul is like this weaned child. Can I ask you an honest question? Is your soul calm, quiet, and contented today? Like a child asleep on his mother's chest? Is your soul quiet and peaceful? This is why we need silence and solitude, because this is where it takes us. The problem is if we're honest, our lives are not arranged around silence and solitude. Our lives are arranged around noise and chaos. If you actually want to look at your life and how it's ordered, how it's arranged, your life, much like mine, is probably arranged around noise and chaos. Think of how much noise is in your life. Think of how many voices, think of how many sights, think of how many sounds, think of the technology, think of the social media, think of all the conversations and all the informations and all the podcasts and streaming services and games and music. I mean, it is like noise 24/7 coming at us. And then think of the chaos, the commitments, the activities, the duties, the responsibilities, the drama that we have literally arranged our life around it, and we've chosen it. A lot of you are sitting here, you're like, I hate the noise and the chaos, but it just comes at me. Okay, if you carry a phone, you have chosen to arrange your life around noise and chaos. What is a phone? A phone is a device that will allow any voice in the world to get a hold of you at any point in time. And so all of a sudden noise starts coming at me, and noise is screaming, and every notification and every sight and sound and thing, and then all the chaos, the drama of that person from high school and homecoming drama and what's happening in the election and all these things. I literally set notifications so I can be arranged around noise and chaos. Bing, 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 bing. Yes? Like literally, so I don't have a problem with the phone. I'm just trying to tell you what it is. When we carry it around, you are literally saying, noise and chaos, I have arranged myself around you. This is why it's so hard. We're always like, where's my phone? Where's my phone? Where's my phone? Where's my phone? I can't put my phone down. Because the moment I don't have a phone, my life is moving towards silence and solitude. And that is very awkward and very uncomfortable. And we start backing up like, I don't know what you're talking about today, bud, but I don't like it. See, to practice silence and solitude is literally a holy rebellion. It's a divine resistance. It's a heavenly defiance against the order of this world. You don't defeat noise and chaos by just choosing less noise and chaos. You defeat noise and chaos by the opposite spirit of silence and solitude. So when I choose silence and solitude, when I quiet things down and withdraw to be alone with God, it's literally a holy rebellion, a divine resistance, a heavenly defiance against the kingdom of this world, the kingdom of noise, if you will, that I am choosing to remove myself from, saying you can be chaotic, you can be noisy, you can go as fast as you want, but I am choosing to step out of that stream, and I am quieting things down, and I am withdrawing in order to be alone with God, because that's where a healthy soul is found. You know those snow globes that you see at Christmas time, and there's a picture or a scene inside of here, and you shake it up, and all the snow starts going everywhere? Well, I think our lives are like this giant snow globe, and it's noise and chaos floating around all over the place. But the moment you set that thing down, the noise and the chaos all comes down, and all of a sudden there's this silence and this solitude. And when all the flakes come to the bottom, you can actually see what the scene is all about. See, silence and solitude will remind you that you're never alone. We live in a world that has an epidemic of loneliness. Rejection and abandonment are rampant. We're lonely, we're lost, we want to be seen, we want to be known, we want to be loved, we want to be validated. So we spend most of our lives trying to earn the approval and the affirmation and the affection of the crowd in order to deal with this deep-seated loneliness within us. But the paradox is this: it's only in solitude where you will discover that you are never alone. It's only when I withdraw from the world and get alone with God that I realize I have never been alone, and I am not alone, and I will never be alone. Why? Because it's in solitude where I realize that He is with me. Never will I leave you. Never will I forsake you. Do not fear, for I am with you. It's only in silence and solitude where you actually discover that you have never been alone and you will never be alone. Second thing is silence and solitude, listen to me, it exposes your soul like nothing else. When you get into silence and solitude, it's just your soul and God. That's all there is. There's nothing to hide behind. There's no distractions. There's no one to blame. There's no information. There's nothing to point out. There's nothing to make it about. There is no mask you can wear. When you get into silence and solitude, it exposes your soul, and there you are. It's Adam and Eve in the garden. When they take the fruit and they sin and they violate what God asked them to do. And then it says they heard the sound of God walking through the garden. It was so silent that they could hear God's footsteps on the leaves. And they were alone. And in that silence and solitude, they were exposed when God says, Adam, where are you? And Adam comes out and he says, I was afraid when I heard you. I was naked and ashamed, and so I hid. And he says, who told you you were naked? Did you eat from the tree I told you not to? And in that moment, there is nothing for Adam to hide behind. He is fully exposed before God. This is why we're terrified. I mean, if I asked you the question, if I just said to you, hey, how's your soul? How would you answer that question? Most of us would start talking about the things that we're doing, the activities, the adventures, the accomplishments, or we would start complaining about the people in our life while they're messing everything up. But that's not your soul. How's your soul? Do you know what a soul is? Do you have one? Have you ever seen it? Do you know what condition it's in? See, it's only when we get in silence and solitude where our soul actually comes out, because your soul is not loud and demanding. So if you arrange your life around noise and chaos, your soul, like a turtle, will withdraw. It will pull inside of there in order to protect itself. But when things get quiet enough, it might poke its head out, and you might actually see it. And when it gets exposed, God can actually do some healing and some freeing and some restoring. And then it allows us to hear God's whisper. See, we all say we want to hear God's voice, but we arrange our lives as if we never wanted to hear God's voice. I want to hear God's voice. I just need him to speak louder. Well, God is not interested in competing for your attention. He's very secure in himself, so he doesn't need to do all these things to get you to arrange your life. Like, he's pretty good. He's just waiting for you to quiet it all down. And God doesn't speak in the spectacular. He speaks in the whisper, because the whisper causes us to lean in. In fact, you remember the story of Elijah that the Lord said, go out and stand in the mountain in the presence of the Lord, for the Lord is about to pass by. Then a great and powerful wind tore the mountains apart and shattered the rocks before the Lord. But the Lord wasn't in the wind. After the wind, there was an earthquake. But the Lord wasn't in the earthquake. After the earthquake came a fire. But the Lord wasn't in the fire. And after the fire came a gentle whisper. When Elijah heard it, he pulled the cloak over his face and went out and stood at the mountain of the cave. Then a voice said to him. See, God's voice is not in the spectacular, it's in the whisper. Is your life arranged in such a way that you can actually hear the whisper? What does God want to say to you? What has he been trying to say to you? The problem is our life is so noisy and so chaotic, we can't hear him, then we say he doesn't talk. This is why silence and solitude is a declaration of faith, because when I quiet my life, I'm saying God will speak. And when I choose solitude and withdraw from the world to be alone with God, I say he is here. And I expect him to speak and to be present. So here's your practice plan for this week. Wake up early every day this week and practice silence and solitude for 10 minutes. Just try it. Just try it. This is it. I'm not asking you to add anything into your life. I'm asking you to take 10 minutes of sleep out of your life. Every day this week, 10 minutes, wake up earlier and practice silence and solitude. You say, well, what do? You find a quiet place in your house or on the back porch or in the park. And you set a timer and you put it in another room. You put it away from you so you're not by your phone. And you set timer for 10 minutes and you then present yourself to God. You say, God, I've turned down all the noise out here. I'm working on turning down the noise in here. I have withdrawn from my family, my friends, my responsibilities, the crowd, this world, all the things that need my attention today. I've withdrawn from them to be with you. God, I am trying to be present, and I want to present myself to you so that you can do a deep work within me. You say, then what do? Then you sit there and you wait on the Lord. And you let him do what only he can do.
So come on, silence and solitude is simply a way to experience more of God. It reminds us that we're never alone. It exposes our soul and it allows us to hear God's whisper. In other words, silence and solitude opens us up to become more like Jesus. Silence, turning down the noise, and solitude, withdrawing from the world to draw near to God. It's one of the things that Jesus did, and it's available to us today. So let's turn to our tables now and talk about it.